Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. Okay, so welcome to this class, which would be, I would say, the last easy class, the last class where there is no excessive modelization of anything. So it's just pure content. And then next we start with doing more microeconomics and stuff like that. Yeah, but today we just finish presenting everything we want to present about pollutions and everything. Okay, so let me just find out where we were last time. All right, so I think we're discussing. Okay, so point source versus non-point source, right? So regional, global, yeah. All right. So today the program is to just finish our big classifications of different types of pollutants and then look at specific things that may interest us, like greenhouse gases, like electricity production, and like ways in which we technically could get rid of pollution, and especially looking specifically at electricity production. So not from an economics perspective, in the sense that we don't want to say already what type of economic policy would be implemented, but just looking at what can be done from a technical point of view. Yeah. So again, stop me if you have questions. So point source versus not point source. So point source pollutants come from a specific source. So what makes it easier is of course then you have only one actor to talk to, that you need to talk to. So that's quite easier. It's easier to legislate. What's more complicated is when everybody emits pollution, then you really need large scale interventions. And so especially non-point source, you really need large scale economic approaches, by which I mean, yeah, legislative interventions like taxes, like tradable emission permits that involve everybody in one country and even in many countries. Otherwise, you just can't do anything with them. So yeah, power plant emissions, pollutants, are from one major industrial facility. So in that way, if it's pollution that is something specific, like a specific chemical, then it's easy to deal with. But at the same time, if you're talking about greenhouse gases, then okay, there's that plant that emits it, but also cars and also all these other plants around the world. So that makes it much more difficult. Yes, so non-source pollutants do not have a clearly identified source, or the sources are numerous, and it's hard to tell which exact emitter produces the pollution. So GHG is greenhouse gases, stormwater runoff on roadways. So that's bad because you have roadways everywhere. So if they're dirty and then there's runoff that goes into the water flows, waterways, for instance, then that's bad. Agricultural chemicals run off the land, so it's a bit the same problem. Is if you have very large region with lots of places where farmers have use chemicals, especially fertilizers, and that runs off in the water, then it can create algal blooms down the road, and it's just very hard to pin down where that came from because so many farmers may be involved. Yeah, so point source pollutants are easier to address, as it is possible to identify and monitor the source of the pollution. So here the very big point, big word is monitor. So that's the key. If you cannot even know what's happening, then everybody can deny all the time. So you can say, yeah, I didn't do anything, if you don't measure it. Or even if you measure it and it's Volkswagen, then they can just corrupt your measurement and their car emission and fraud the system. So that I don't know if you've heard about this scandal by Volkswagen. It's from a few years ago, 2 years ago, maybe. Yes, no. Yes, all right. And also, of course, that's what's needed at the country level. So how do you monitor how do you know how much greenhouse gases are emitted by countries? We're going to have to see many different measurements. These are the best we can do, given our estimates of how much is emitted by which party, but yeah, it's much easier when it's a big centralized plant compared to continuous versus episodic. So continuous involves a steady production of pollution, so that's it's bad because it's always ongoing. So it's emission from power plants, cars, household on a continuous basis. So just coal. So burning coal worldwide causes 800,000 premature deaths per year. So, and coal is also responsible for 46% of CO2 emissions. So that's just a crazy amount. No, I have my doubts about my 46%. Is that emissions from, I think it's from electricity production. I'm not completely sure. I'd have to check that. So I just changed the slides again. So yeah, maybe there are some detail I'm not sure again. So I'll have to check that. Yeah. So by the way, do you know how many people die from malaria each year? So malaria is caused by mosquito bites. And can somebody guess more or less, or you can just Google it. So yeah, so just to put things in perspective, so malaria deaths. So about 400,000 per year. So this is before COVID. That was the worst disease around the world, and just coal production kills twice as many people as deaths from malaria. So that's just crazy. So we should really get rid of it. Yeah, so some continuous pollutants are easy to address. They can be more easily measured or monitored. Pollution control technology can be installed. So car emission, power plant emission, wastewater emission. So that's it. What's hard with episodic pollutants is that you hope for the best, but then you have a catastrophe somewhere, and then so you cannot really monitor it from day to day because there's nothing, and then there's a catastrophe. So you have to assess risk, but that's just very difficult to do. So episodic pollutants only happen occasionally or rarely. That choose to reduce the risk that pollution will occur. And of course, now I'm talking about pollution, but it's a larger thing, right? So it's environment economics, but what is environment? In a way, why do we care that environment be clean or be be good for human beings to live in? It's because we don't want to die in this, if it's not necessary to. So it's really linked to the risk. So here we're inevitably going to be talking about the risk of catastrophic events as well. So we could say that a catastrophic event, I don't know if it's so if there's an explosion somewhere, you may say that wasn't a big spill that killed ducks or fishes, but if it's a big catastrophe that kills many people, then that's totally something that we should be caring about too. Yeah, so and of course, big catastrophic events. So somebody have things in mind? What comes to your mind when we talk about these things?
Well, one example, I don't know if it's a pollutant, but it's more from a natural disaster, like a volcano eruption, where I don't know if you could.
Oh yeah, we just had one recently.
yeah, there was one.
Yeah, but so if we're talking about pollutants, we really are talking about what humans do to, that was caused by humans. Yeah, because otherwise, yeah, it's true that's totally something we want to avoid, but try and avoid a volcano or predict it, that's very difficult. Or typhoons, they're the same thing. Although typhoons, you could say, so scientists are trying more and more to look at the link between increased temperatures and large weather events. And so typhoons would go into that, so yes. So greenhouse. So that's continuous. But if climate change causes extreme weather events, is episodic. So nothing else. You don't. Yeah. So explosion in Beirut. Thing with that is it's really that's a big catastrophe for sure. But I wouldn't say it's caused by some industrial activity that was that's really caused by negligence by the local authorities. Yeah, so it's
some more like human error. So more human error.
Exactly. And criminal negligence. So they say that they had like 4 reports in the prior years. So they said, oh, we had these huge amount of nitrate, I think it was, in the port, and it's next to fireworks, and we should remove that away, and then nothing's done. And then the other people, and then there's another report from another person who says the same thing, and the same. At some point it reaches the parliament, but then there's gridlock and people don't want to collaborate on anything, and then so yeah, that's really a political tragedy. But so what I had in mind is more oil spills or things like that, right? Yes, when maybe it happened too long ago, so I may be old enough to have witnessed some of them, but maybe not you. Yeah, so major events. So yeah, just oil spills, oil tanker spills. So one was in 1979. I wasn't alive. So it spilled 280,000 tons of crude oil. BP Deepwater Horizon. I hope some of you remember that. So that was I think one of the probably in history the largest spill ever. So it spilled 422,000 tons of crude oil. So that's oil well blowout. This is tanker. So these are all different categories of things that can go wrong with oil. So that should really put our mind to the fact that we should get away from that. Pipeline rupture. So the one was quite bad is in Kolva River in Russia, spilled 264,000 tons of crude oil. One that's, this is not oil, but still that's a spill. That's historically, I think, the worst that spill that happened in India, in the Bhopal plant, and so it killed 18,000 people. So because of methyl isocyanate gas. And I was hoping somebody would remember that one. So in Lac Mégantic in 2013, nobody remembers that. So a train spill, and it was a huge train. It contained, I've just done the computation, it contained 68,000 tons of crude oil in the train. And it burned in this. And what's much worse is this is at the center of the sea. So yeah, it's bad for the sea animals and stuff. But this happened in the middle of the city, so it killed 47 people. That's I think the second worst train disaster in Canada's history, and certainly in this century for sure. Yeah, so these are pretty bad. All right. So one thing we can do is apply all. So these are all ways of categorizing the pollutants. So accumulative versus non-accumulative, local, regional, continuous, episodic. Then one thing we may try and do is so classify them if it's accumulative or non-accumulative, local or regional, global. Point source or non-point source, continuous or episodic. Yeah, and so for instance, if I were to ask you automobile GHG emissions, so let's do that together, and I'll just leave the two others for you to think about. So that one. So accumulative or non-accumulative? Yes.
Cumulative.
Local or regional or global? Yeah, global. We have cars everywhere, and the atmosphere is everywhere. Point source or non-point source? Yeah, you could say it's point source, the car. So there's some way to monitor how much how much each car model emits. So in that way, it's possible to have a good idea of what's going on. But also so cars are everywhere. So hard to monitor all of them. So in that case, in that sense, it wouldn't be point source. So if I were to ask you this kind of question, of course, so we do our best to classify things, to just to make our minds about stuff, but of course it's open to interpretation, and what you have is to argue your case for whatever you answer. And then continuous or episodic. Yeah, continuous. And finally, there are also environment damage that are not related to emissions per se. So what are they? They are deterioration, like the biggest one is loss of habitat. So expansion of housing, commercial areas that destroy the environmental value and of the land. So that's the leading cause of species extinction around the world. So one of the big places where it's happening right now is for agriculture. Oh, okay, all right. There's a website that, all right. So if you, so there's a nice proposal there. So if you have the address, I'll just put it on in the slides. All right, nice. All right. Oh yeah, that's the problem with the. Yeah, I hate it because there's just no way to copy. This is the worst aspect of Zoom. So I'll try to just read it. Footprintcalculator.org. /home /en footprint calculator.org. Hopefully that works. Again, these are the best we can do, but so as we are saying, some pollutants are more difficult to measure than others. Yeah, so like for discharge, so just back to these non-emission related damages. So you must understand the incentive that create these impacts and change the incentive when appropriate. So for instance, Brazilian rainforest, where does that come from? Well, the beef is something that people like to eat, especially in the United States. And you need to produce a lot of feed to feed those cows. So that's what they do. So they just burn down the forest. They don't even use it all that much, but they just use the space to grow corn or whatever other plants. But it's not even used to feed humans most of the time. It's used to feed cows so that they can be exported. So or you even can consume it in Brazil. So that's the main thing is understanding what's going on so you can address these things. Yeah, exactly. So they can be managed by the. All right. So turning to an important pollutant. So greenhouse gases. So I'm just going to ask you from the top of your head, which region do you think is worse for greenhouse gases? Is it Europe, North America, Asia? Yeah, Asia is quite intense in that way. So it used very short time ago. So 30 years ago, it used to be that Asia was doing quite nothing compared to Europe and the US. As you can see, Europe has decreased its CO2 emissions quite large amount. US, North America doesn't look like there's much progress going on because this is about staying the same height. But then what's exploding there? That's China, of course. China. India is increasing a bit, but you see that China is way behind. India, sorry, is way behind China in terms of emissions. So, where does this greenhouse gas come from in China? Yeah, everything at some point is made for, but so the more closely related to the source, what is it? No, I wouldn't say that the population in China from this moment to this moment is about the same. It's maybe a bit bigger, but not that much. Yeah, exactly. Burning coal. Burning. So they open, I don't know, a few plants per week in China just to fuel all their production. So that's crazy amount of pollution. Yeah. So looking closer at individual countries. Yeah. So just don't focus on this right away. So this is, yes, just some select countries, just to have a perspective on how things are going. So if you look at Canada, here we are. We used to be a bit better than the US, but look at that. And, recently, there's the difference, the gap is really becoming smaller. So we're almost the worst country in the world for, yeah, there are some countries that are doing way worse, like yeah, some Middle Eastern countries that just export oil a lot. But still, so in North America, we can't really say that we're doing much better than the US. It's about the same. And look at that in Europe. So this struck me quite a bunch. So France and Sweden are doing almost the same. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit. Yeah, so France and Sweden are doing almost the same, but Germany is much worse. So somebody knows what's going on in Germany? In recent years, they installed a lot of solar power. So what's going on? Is that working or not working? No idea. What's the difference between France and Germany? No. So I'm going to use the same answers as before. Coal. Coal is always the right answer. So yeah. It's a bit smaller. So. Yeah. So France uses a lot of nuclear. Germany, 40% coal. So again, that's yeah, coal is the main culprit there. So this is it's surprising for me that they do use that much coal. But yeah, that's the thing. They want to turn to solar, but it's tricky because yeah, solar, as we're going to see, it's getting good, but it's just not quite there yet. And they have to make up for it with some other source. And they've decided we don't want nuclear in Germany, so we're just going to install nothing. But in France, they do, and you see that it makes a huge difference between the two. So yeah. And then what is this? yeah, so this didn't format as well as I would have hoped. This is of GDP. So the thing is, we can look at this and think, oh, is it bad? Is it okay? Should we feel sad? Should we feel not sad about this? So if you just talk to somebody in the street, if somebody really cares about the environment, they're going to say it's horrible. If people don't care, they're going to say, why should we worry about this? So at some point, we need to put some value on how bad this is to emit that much CO2 emissions. So here, this is what I'm doing there. So recently, the Biden administration estimate. So first of all, you need to estimate how much damage is caused by a ton of CO2 emissions. So the median is about $30, but the Biden administration put it at $51 per ton. So that's the estimated damage that this ton is going to do to the future if you assume a 4% discount rate on what's happening in the future. So this, we're going to discuss more about this, but basically if you have a very high discount rate, then you don't care about the future at all. And if you have a 0% discount rate, it means that you care as much about the future as you care about the present. And yeah, so 4% is a value that's been used by many people in reports and stuff. So then they estimate that the cost of a ton of emission is $51. So that means that okay. So that means that the yearly damage. So in Canada, we're here. So that's the best, the most recent. So I think it's 2020 or something. So it's about 14 tons. So we can just say 14 tons times $50 per ton means that the cost is about per person $700. And so $700. So it means that on average, so if you're an average Canadian citizen, so you're causing $700 of damage per year just for living and being a Canadian, which is not trivial at all. So if you think that the GDP per capita of Canada is $43.2 thousand, so that's 1.6% of GDP. Yeah, so it gives you an average. So it's so what you have to think is in your life, 1.6% of all the income you create or all the revenue you have is not really something good because you're causing damage because of that. So that it's certainly non-trivial. It's not 50%, but it's certainly something we have to care about. Now, just thinking, though, should you feel bad about this as a Quebec citizen, for instance? So that's some other question. So why is Canada doing so bad, in your opinion? Somebody knows? No idea. Is Quebec the worst, or is some other province doing yeah, but the water doesn't generate so much CO2 emissions, right? So what activity would you think in Canada is the main culprit of CO2 emissions? Yes, so in that case, coal isn't the right answer. It's but it's pretty close. Yeah, so my question was why is Canada doing so bad? And yes, it's Alberta. Oops. Oh shit, that's not. So that's emissions per province, and you see Quebec is there. So this is total emissions, and you see that it's been actually going down since. So there's 1990, 2005, 2016. 2016 was a bit lower. In my opinion, 2021 would be even lower because of the slowdown in economic activity. So yeah, Quebec is like 23% of Canada's production, but yeah, it has 9.4 ton of greenhouse gas per capita. So and the national average is 19%. So I can give you the statistics there. So it's 9.4. Greenhouse gas per capita. And you remember, so here it's national average is yeah, at that time it was closer to about 19%. So these were yeah, now it's lower than it used to be, but yeah, it's way under the national average. And thanks to hydropower. And Alberta is what makes us look bad. So that's the hard thing about talking about Canada's climate policy. What is Canada's climate policy? It's a huge country where each province is just completely doing its own thing. And if you're the federal government, you have to say nice things about Alberta if you don't want to lose too much votes there, but then yeah, so it's just you have to say, yeah, we're going to help the oil production in Alberta, but at the same time we're going to do something about climate. How? I don't know. That's the that's the worst thing. All right, so that's for greenhouse gas. So another thing that's very important is electricity production. So what's bad, what's not so bad about it? So this I'm asking you, which source pollutes more in terms of greenhouse gases or other? This you should have an idea now, by now. Yes, coal. Coal is the right answer there. So which is more dangerous? Nuclear. So what do you mean by dangerous? Yeah, risk. And do you have an accident in mind? Yes. So was it the worst accident for electricity production in history? Or Fukushima? So Chernobyl. Electricity production. All right. Which source is more widely used? Coal again. Yeah, that's the problem with coal, is just it's everywhere and it's very easy to dig from the ground. So which is cheaper? This is a tricky one because it's changing all the time. Yeah, solar is quite good. So solar is a good candidate, but it's complicated, as we are going to see. All right. So first, yes, solar. Yeah, that's good. All right, so let's start with pollution. So yes, you are right. Coal is it is the worst by far. There is one extreme number there. I don't know what this is exactly. Why it would some hydropower plant have produced such a huge amount of CO2 emissions? Maybe that's linked to how much you needed to pour concrete in the reservoir, or I don't know. So this is I haven't been able to find out what was this number there. So I'm just going to put question marks there. But yeah, if you look at how much greenhouse gases are produced by, so these numbers are from IPC to 2014. And so they're a very nice number because they include like everything, even the change in albedo effect. Yeah, change in so how much it costs to build it. So it's yeah, so it's yeah, so it's yeah, I don't exactly. Yeah, I think it's grams of CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour. Anyways, so as you can see, yeah, coal is the big winner. So we should really get rid of it. And here you see you have gas. So gas, it clearly does it clearly does emit, but in the US, as you've seen in recent years, this has been going down quite steeply. And this, what is it? This is substitution from coal to gas, natural gas, electricity. So what does that mean? It means that gas is bad, but if you don't have anything else right now, it's better than nothing. In the short run, yes. So gas is emits a lot, but as emergency. But let's just say decent emergency replacement to coal. So for instance, if you were Germany and you said, I would really like to have solar, but right now I can't, I'm not able to have 100% solar. What should I use as a second source? Coal is a very, very stupid idea. Gas, they have lots of gas from Russia that they can import. I know that it creates lots of tension in Europe, so I'm not going to say that I know better than they do, but yeah, if from a purely environmental perspective, if you have to pick one or the other, then just pick gas for sure. And then once you get to these, it's just very, very small. Wind onshore, nuclear, wind offshore. So of course, nuclear, what you have to keep in mind is it generates other yeah, problem here is all right. So that's this now. As we said, so the more dangerous one is nuclear for risk. So let's look at that. So we're going to look specifically at mortality rate associated with energy sources. No, it's not the case. So yeah, I put that before just to see what was your sort of preconceived idea about this. But yeah, I was quite surprised when I look at these numbers, but they don't lie. So coal again is way worse. So as we were saying, it causes 800,000 deaths per year. So that's a tragedy. And what's nice about these numbers that so you can really look at what happens in a developing country like China or an emergent economy or in a developed country. So you could say, yeah, but coal is produced in China. Maybe in the US is not that bad. Yes, it's that bad even in the US. So it's 10,000 dead per trillion kilowatt hours. And so yes, these are so, but this was 32%, but this is for the last 40 years. So that why? Because you need to assess risk. So you need a big sample of accidents. Yeah. One other comment. So among the renewables, so biomass, again, that's emissions. So these are all, yeah. So that's. All right, that's from accidents and emission. Hydro. So these don't cause a lot of deaths. Hydro, I was surprised when I saw this. Do you know what was the worst disaster in history for hydroelectricity? Of course, that's not ongoing because normally you don't have any deaths caused by hydroelectric electricity. No, that's something, yeah, nobody knows about this. It happened in 1975 in China, but I have the data here. So. So worst, and that's actually the worst accident for any electricity production source ever. So it's in 1975, there was a dam failure in China. It killed right away, plus from the consequences, 171,000 people. So and it made 11 million people homeless. So just from a dam failure. So yeah, it's in Quebec we have a lot of dams, but thankfully most of them are quite far from human populations, and hopefully they're not going to break and cause deaths, but the risk is not zero. And now, oh yeah, one thing to say about nuclear is so this number there is not really good. It should be much lower than that. So because the United Nations have tried to estimate how many cancers. So first of all, there were about 40 people died at Chernobyl right away from just they were working there or firemen. By the way, if you have seen the Chernobyl series, that's an awesome series. I really recommend it. Yeah, so, but then it's very difficult to estimate how many cancers were caused by the tragedy. And up to recently, they were using this estimation of 4,000 people, maybe. But the more recent numbers say that, yeah, probably it's just, yeah, the total number of deaths is maybe 58. So, and 9 thyroid cancers in children, but otherwise it's just, there might be a bit more cancer incidence, but you cannot claim that they really cause death. So that's probably like one order of magnitude lower than that, so maybe 9 or something. And in the US is 0.1. Yeah, so from a purely risk perspective and emission perspective, then there's just no contest. So nuclear produces very, very little CO2 emissions, and it's the safest by far. Oh, by the way, so somebody said mentioned Fukushima. So how many people died at Fukushima? Yeah, so the worst accident for a nuclear was Chernobyl, and 58 dead. So other nuclear accident. So there's the 3 Mayans. Islands. And there was 0 deaths. And yeah, so Fukushima. Again. 0 deaths. Yeah, so that's why the number is so low, because so I'm not saying that like we should just go nuclear. It has risks and we have to keep them in mind. But we have to actually know what the risks are. So we have to know what the numbers are. And so we're able to have a conversation about them. And at the end of the day, so some people may say, I think that what people have in their mind is, oh, Chernobyl happened, so maybe if we use nuclear energy, we might have a big disaster. But by the same token, I would say, yeah, there was the Baikan Dam failure in China, and 171,000 people are dead. So maybe shouldn't we use hydropower in Quebec? I'm not too scared about hydroelectricity in Quebec. I think it's pretty safe. And I think nuclear engineers that work on nuclear plants in France, for instance, they would be a bit insulted if you say, yeah, but it's very risky what you're doing because Chernobyl. But they would say, yeah, but it's been a very, very long time since Chernobyl, and our technology has nothing to do with it. Yeah, fusion. Yeah, fusion is a good one. Yeah, fusion may be a very good one. Just it takes time. So there's this saying that fusion is 30 years away and always will be. So maybe that's the case, maybe not. So it looks like exciting progress in nuclear, in fusion. There has been the past few years, so maybe it's getting there. Yeah. All right, so that's energy production for you. All right, so now addressing pollution. So I've just talked about greenhouse gases, electricity. That's the main thing we should worry about, I think. So as we've seen, there is the circular flows of influence of the environment and of economy that creates pollution. And that looking at this circular flow, it gives us some idea of how we could intervene to address it. So here I've highlighted 4 main ways. So 1, reduce the quantity of goods and services produced. 2, reduce the residual from production. 3, increase recycling. And 4, increase waste treatment. So just looking at these ones, which seem more promising from your perspective? Yeah. So what about 2, reducing residuals from production? No takers, increasing recycling. Maybe now you're worried about what's coming, so you're thinking, oh, I shouldn't commit myself because maybe that's not the right answer. Oh yeah, by the way, that's something I have to, yeah, so no, I'm going to remove this because yeah, you can't say that it's the most dangerous. So the most dangerous is, yeah, coal again. All right, so we're going to see if that one is most promising. So that's a very old idea that essentially as soon as mass production and the industrial revolution starts going, then people realize, oh, we are producing a lot and we're exploiting nature much faster than we should have been. So the problem comes with our technology, and what we have to do is restrict ourselves. So here, this guy is Henry David Thoreau. So that's a poet from the 19th century, I think. And so yeah, so you could say he's the father of voluntary simplicity. I don't know if you can say that in English. In French, it's simplicité volontaire. So he's saying you shouldn't aspire to consume a lot. You should keep your life simple, have few possessions, and enjoy nature. Simplify. David Suzuki. So again, he's talking about the fact that the idea of eternal economic growth is absurd. How much is enough? And she is Greta Thunberg. I hope you know who she is. And this is one of the statements again. So we are in the beginning, in the beginning of mass extinctions, and all you talk about is, oh, sorry, and the fairy tale of eternal economic growth out there. So that person, I'm pretty sure nobody knows who this is. I put him there because he's an interesting character. He's Alexander Grothendieck. He's considered by many people to be the greatest mathematician of the 20th century. And so at some point he had an epiphany and he realized, oh, our science and our technology is just causing harm to the world. We should stop doing science, stop producing a lot, and we should live simply. And he died alone, basically, in France, and he stopped completely doing anything. But yeah, he was a big campaigner for stopping the big industrial machine and science and everything. So what's what should we think about this sort of idea? Well, for economists, they're not too popular. Oh, man, what time is it? Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, what's the economist's reaction to this? So it may look like that's something that's virtuous to do because we're sinning by wanting to consume a lot, and it's good to cleanse ourselves. But problem is it may not be that popular in the general population. It's try and getting yourself elected by saying, oh, by the way, there was the coronavirus and you had to stay home and you couldn't travel too much and it was hard on your consumption. Well, how about you elect me and we cut back by 50%, because that's basically what we should be doing if we want to avoid the 2 degrees Celsius increase in temperatures. So good luck getting elected by this. So people are going to vote for you if you say, oh, vote for me. You're going to be happy, you're going to have a job, and the economy is going to go well, and you're all going to be rich. So that's the problem with all of this. It's people may claim that they're virtuous and they don't mind sacrificing, but when it comes to voting, it's not that easy. And so basically this program implies one or two things. So either people have to live with less, or the population has to shrink. So we have to be fewer people, or the same number of people, but everybody consumes less than they would otherwise. Yeah, so they're reluctant to give up their income or material possessions. So everybody is happy to not consume what they don't want. But then if you say, yeah, but by the way, I'm going to take away that thing that we really like, then yeah, it's not so. Everybody has likes to take I don't know, a long steamy bath with lots of hot water. So you're saying, yeah, I'm going to use a tote bag at the grocery store, but taking my hot bath that consumes a lot of electricity, I'm not going to sacrifice that. Or personally, so I used to live in France and I had to come back to see my family. So, and it's very sad to admit, but all the efforts I may have done during 1 year to use my bicycle a lot and to not consume too much, it was completely destroyed by just one trip by airplane to Quebec. Because airplanes are so bad for the environment. Yeah, so it's a hard project. It's a hard sale. And finally, so poor countries may see this as unjust because rich nations have industrialized while polluting. So they're saying, yeah, but why do you have the right to enjoy a nice life with abundance? And you're saying we should just stop industrializing right now and stay poor. So that's right. If China had stayed here, then we would be in much less trouble. All of this would not be there. But it's hard to blame Chinese for wanting to be at least not as poor as they used to be. So I would say no. I would remove this. So from an economist perspective, that's not the most promising. Second one is why? Because essentially what the second one is like a magic wand. So you're saying you can have everything you've had before, but I'm going to make the pollution disappear because it's going to appear with less pollution attached to it. So it looks like I'm just we're running against against technology, and we just want to put all our faith in the technological advancement. So I'm not saying this is going to work by no means, but it's if the world is burning, so you need to act in the most efficient manner. And this program is not the most popular and not one that's going to yield to the most people on being on board. But that one might just do it. So it involves making the production process less polluting. So it can mean a shift in consumption or less polluting goods and more environmentally friendly goods. So I'm not saying that we should consume exactly the same, but you may receive the same amount of utility or happiness from your goods, but these goods were consumed were produced using less pollution than other goods, for instance. So in that case, that would be rechargeable batteries, reusable water bottles, house cleaners with less chemicals, solar phone chargers, shower timers. Yeah, still, it's I don't know why I put it here, because that's a sacrifice if you have to take a shorter shower. Energy efficient appliances and vehicles, carbon capture and at the source. This is important. So at the source, because you can capture carbon in the atmosphere, but that's a whole new story, a whole other story. Vehicle efficiency is a huge one. So it's today's vehicles are so much more energy efficient than they used to be. So we didn't sacrifice cars, we just have cars that emit less CO2. And so people were saying, yeah, solar is becoming cheaper, and this is true. So it used to be that it was the most expensive. So just in 2009, so that's yesterday, it's like it's 13 years ago, solar was the photovoltaic solar was the most expensive source of energy production. And you see this, so it's the best way to put it. It's like some Moore's law. It's just been decreasing each year. And now you look, and this is 2020. So yeah, it's 90% reduction in the cost of energy generation. And the second one is onshore wind. Then the gray one is gas. So gas can be quite cheap as well. And then the brown one, geothermal. Then coal. Coal, that's the problem with coal. It's always been cheap, but yeah, you see there's no change in the technology, so at least it's not becoming cheaper. Otherwise, we would be doomed. But it's always been cheap. So why aren't we just saying, well, perfect, there's no problem with this? Oh yeah, and I have another one. Solar again. So that's the. Oh yeah. So these are the forecasts that we used to have about how fast the price of solar would decline. And this is how fast the price of solar has declined over time. So it's declining extremely fast. So why aren't we using solar all the time for everything? No idea. Yeah, yes, it's that would be it. But so if you have to, so is there a solution to the lack of sun? High maintenance. I don't know. It's part of the cost, and the cost is quite low. Yeah, so this I'm really not sure because for me, I have no clue where my energy comes from. I think it comes from hydroelectric, but if it comes from wind or from solar, it doesn't change that electricity is electricity. So the real problem is renewable, like solar, wind. It's yeah, it's storage. Yeah, wind, sun, are always available. So this means that this figure here and this figure here are somehow misleading because they don't include the fact that for coal you don't need a huge battery to store your energy. For nuclear, you don't need a huge battery to store your energy. So you can just adjust the speed as much as you need it. Same for hydro. Do I have hydropower there? Well, it looks like I don't have it. Yeah, and this one is one of the biggest authorities on everything in electricity production. And what he's saying is, yeah, that's the big challenge. Give me mass scale storage, and I don't worry about at all. So that's in Science magazine. So with my wind and photovoltaic, I can take care of everything, but we are nowhere close to it. So that's the real challenge is storage. So where are we with the storage? So these are two. So this one is actual that's existing nowadays. This one is it's a nice project that they're having. So the good news is it's very hot sector right now. Electricity storage. So many people are thinking about new sorts of batteries. So right now, this one is produced by Tesla. So that's that. So they sold that to Australia to as backup for their grid. And yeah, so the cost is 200 to 300 per kilowatt hour. So that's quite cheaper than it used to be, but still non-negligible. And that one is quite interesting. It's Gravity, it's called. And this is linked to the, I'm going to finish with this. So it's linked to the, the idea of storing hydro dams. So what's neat about for Quebec is that it would be very easy to add solar or wind to our energy mix, because when it's night or when it's not windy, then you can just start using your hydroelectricity because you have all this water stored in the dam. But the problem is you don't have big rivers everywhere around the world. So their idea is simple. They say, oh, we're going to use the intermittent electricity produced by solar or wind, and we're going to just pile up big cubes of concrete very high. And then when we need the electricity, then we just generate the electricity by having the cubes go back down. So I think that's a very clever idea. And it's actually right now, even cheaper than batteries produced by Tesla. Disposing of them is interesting. Yeah, but batteries have problems too. So batteries problems. So lithium and other are rare. So we might run out quite soon, and dangerous to dispose of. Yeah, so that's the big challenge with batteries. So that's why I'm adding this one. This one is cheap concrete. It can be extremely cheap, but there is one flaw to this. It's that it's here. This one can store 100 megawatt to 129 megawatt. This one can only store 35 for a big pile of blocks. So it doesn't have to be close to the city, for instance, but still it's non-negligible that you have these big piles of blocks. So who knows, maybe this is going to work. They have projects in ongoing projects, but yeah, we'll see how it goes in the future. If this succeed, or if we can find good batteries, then we're very good good tool. Okay, so I'm going to stop here and finish quickly the next class. Questions, comments? No, all right. So yeah, now it's time, right? It's time. Okay, so thanks everyone, and I see you next week. Yeah, next week, next Monday.